Open that room, and I'll leave your land forever. Cole Bennett heard the words before he understood why they made his hand tighten around the reins. For 3 mornings, the Apache woman had stood on the ridge east of his ranch. Always alone, always before sunrise, and always watching the same window. Not the cattle, not the well, not the horses moving behind the cedar fence. The window. It belonged to the back room of the Bennett house, a narrow square of dust-covered glass that had not been opened in 12 years. Not since his father died. On the first morning, Cole had ignored her. On the second, he had carried his rifle onto the porch. She had seen it. She had not moved. By the third morning, curiosity had become heavier than caution. So Cole saddled his bay gelding and rode toward the ridge. The desert wind carried sage, horse sweat, and the faint smell of last night's rain. Cottonwood leaves whispered along the creek below. The woman waited beside a red sandstone outcrop. She looked to be somewhere near 30. Tall, straight-backed, long black hair braided behind her shoulders. A bough rested across her saddle, but her hand stayed far from it. Her dark eyes followed Cole as he stopped 20 feet away. That's private land, he said. So I was told. Her English was careful, calm. Cole glanced toward his house below. You've been watching it. Yes. Why? Her gaze returned to the sealed window. Because something inside belongs to the dead. Cole's expression hardened. You should leave. The woman studied him for several seconds. My name is Naya Red Hawk. I didn't ask. No, something about her answer irritated him. Something else made him listen. Naya reached slowly beneath her buckskin coat. Cole's hand drifted toward his revolver. She stopped. May I? Cole gave the smallest nod. She removed a silver locket. Old, scratched, darkened around the edges by age. She opened it. Inside was half a faded photograph. Cole leaned forward despite himself. A young Apache woman stood beside someone whose face had been torn away with the missing half. Naya turned the locket over. A small symbol had been engraved into the back. 3 lines beneath a crooked star. Cole stopped breathing. He had seen that mark before. Every day of his childhood. On the iron key hanging beside his father's desk. The key to the back room. Naya closed the locket. I need you to open it. Cole looked down toward the ranch. The sealed window reflected the rising sun like a blind eye. My father told me never to enter that room. Mine told me never to come here. That brought his eyes back to hers. For the first time, something shifted in Naya's expression. Not fear. Grief. Quiet and old. Cole felt the morning suddenly become colder. What's in there? I don't know. He almost laughed. You've watched my house for 3 days because of something you've never seen? Naya shook her head. I watched because I needed to know what kind of man lived there. Cole's jaw tightened. And her eyes moved briefly toward the rifle in his saddle scabbard. Then back to his face. I haven't decided. Wind crossed the ridge. Below them, a loose shutter struck the house once. Then again. Cole looked toward the sealed room. 12 years. 12 years of obeying a dead man without asking why. When he turned back, Naya was holding the silver locket toward him. Open that room, she said quietly, and I'll tell you why my family remembers your father's name. Cole stared at the locket, then at the distant window, and for the first time since burying his father, he wondered whether the room had been locked to keep strangers out or to keep the truth inside. The key had not moved in 12 years. Cole knew that because the dust around it was still perfect. A thin gray outline marked the shape of the iron ring where it hung beside his father's old desk. Nothing else in the room had been left untouched. Papers had yellowed. Leather had cracked. The clock on the wall had stopped sometime during the winter of '78. But the key remained. Waiting. Naya stood near the doorway behind him. She had removed her hat. Not out of comfort. Out of respect. Cole noticed that and said nothing. The house smelled of cedar, old coffee, and the faint dryness of rooms closed too long. Outside, a horse stamped near the hitching rail. Somewhere beyond the barn, wind pushed against. Loose tin. Cole lifted the key. It was heavier than he remembered. You said there was a chest. Naya nodded. My grandfather spoke of one. Your grandfather knew this room? No, that answer made Cole turn. She held his gaze. He knew your father. The silence between them tightened. Cole walked down the narrow hallway. At the end stood the door. Dark oak. 3 iron hinges. No handle on the outside. Only the lock. He had passed it thousands of times as a boy. Once, at 14, he had asked his father what was inside. The old man had looked at him for a long time before answering. Things that belonged to another life. Cole had never asked again. Now he placed the key into the lock. It resisted, then turned. The click seemed too loud for such a small thing. Naya's breathing changed behind him. Cole pushed the door open. Dust moved through a shaft of morning light. The room was smaller than he expected. A narrow bed, one chair, a wash basin, a shelf with 3 books, and beneath the window, a wooden chest. Naya stopped. Cole looked at her. You knew? I hoped. That isn't the same thing. No, he crossed the room slowly. The chest was made of cedar, reinforced with iron corners. No lock. That bothered him more than if there had been one. He lifted the lid. Inside lay folded blankets, a leather pouch, 2 letters tied with blue thread, and a photograph. Cole reached for it first. His hand froze halfway. The photograph showed his father, much younger, standing beside the same Apache woman from Naya's locket. This time, the picture was whole. Her hand rested on his father's arm. Not like a stranger, not like an enemy, like someone who trusted him. Cole looked at Naya. She had gone very still. That's my grandmother, she whispered. Cole stared at the photograph again. The room seemed to tilt. His father had spent years warning him to be careful around Apache riders. Years telling him that land was the only thing a man could trust. Years saying nothing about this woman. Cole picked up the first letter. The paper cracked softly beneath his fingers. His father's handwriting covered the front. But the name was not Cole's. It read, for Naya Red Hawk. Naya stepped closer. Cole did not open it. Not yet. What did your grandmother want from him? Naya looked toward the chest, then toward the window she had watched for 3 mornings. When she died, she left one instruction. Cole waited. Naya's voice dropped. Find what Bennett buried before someone else does. Cole looked down at the cedar chest. Buried. Naya nodded. This room was never the hiding place. Cole's eyes narrowed. Then what is? She pointed toward the photograph. Behind the 2 figures stood a cottonwood tree. The same tree that still grew beside Cole's western fence. And carved into its trunk, barely visible in the faded image, was the same crooked star from the silver locket. Cole slowly lowered the letter. Outside, a rider appeared on the distant road. Then another. Naya saw them through the window. Her expression changed. Are you expecting company? Cole watched the dust rising behind the approaching horses. No, the lead rider wore a black coat. Even at a distance, Cole recognized him. Jacob Mercer, the richest land buyer in Dry Creek, and the one man who had spent 6 months trying to purchase the western half of Cole's ranch. Cole looked again at the cottonwood in the photograph, then at Naya. For the first time, her strange request no longer felt like the dangerous part. The dangerous part was realizing someone else might already know what lay beneath that tree. Jacob Mercer never rode anywhere without making sure people noticed. By the time his black gelding stopped beside Cole's porch, 2 hired men had already spread out behind him like shadows. Mercer smiled beneath a clean gray hat. Too clean for Dry Creek. Morning, Bennett. Cole stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind him. Naya remained inside. For now. What do you want, Jacob? Mercer looked across the western pasture. Same place he always looked. Toward the cottonwood. I came to improve my offer. You came yesterday. And you said no yesterday. Then you remember. One of Mercer's men laughed. Mercer did not. His gaze drifted toward the house. I heard you had company. Cole's expression remained still. News travels fast. Certain news does. The front door opened. Naya stepped onto the porch. Mercer's smile returned. There it was. Not surprise. Recognition. Cole saw it. So did Naya. Mercer tipped his hat. Miss Red Hawk. The morning seemed to tighten around them. Cole turned slowly toward her. You 2 know each other? Naya's eyes never left Mercer. I know his name. Mercer chuckled. That sounds colder than necessary. You bought grazing rights beside our winter trail. Business. You fenced the water. Also business. Cole looked between them. Another piece. Another thing nobody had bothered to tell him. Mercer dismounted. His boots touched the dust without hurry. I'll give you $3,000 for the western acreage. Cole almost laughed. That land wasn't worth half that last month. Markets change. So do lies. Mercer's face lost a little warmth. His eyes shifted toward Naya. Careful who fills your head, Bennett. Naya said nothing. Mercer stepped closer. Apache families have been telling stories about this valley longer than either of us has been alive. Sacred trees. Old graves. Promised water. Every time settlers improve a piece of ground, suddenly somebody remembers a grandfather who once slept there. Cole felt Naya stiffen beside him. Mercer wanted that. Wanted anger. Cole gave him silence instead. It worked. Mercer's jaw tightened. You know why men like me succeed? Cole waited. Because land belongs to whoever can prove he owns it. Naya finally spoke. And if the proof was stolen? One hired man glanced at Mercer. Small movement. But Cole caught it. Mercer did too. What exactly are you suggesting? Naya reached into her coat. Not for a weapon. For the silver locket. Mercer's eyes dropped to it. Only for a second. That was enough. Cole felt something settle cold in his stomach. Mercer had seen it before. Naya opened the locket. The crooked star caught the sunlight. Mercer's face remained composed. His horse did not. The gelding shifted beneath the reins as Mercer's hand tightened. Cole stepped down from the porch. You know that mark. Mercer smiled again. Weakly this time. I know plenty of old symbols. This one? No, the lie came too quickly. Naya looked toward the cottonwood. Mercer followed her eyes. Again. Too quickly. Cole understood. Whatever lay beneath that tree, Mercer did not merely suspect it existed. He feared it. Offers withdrawn, Cole said. Mercer stared at him. You haven't heard my final number. I just did. A long silence followed. Wind rolled dust between their boots. Mercer mounted. Before turning away, he looked at Naya. You should be careful digging up old promises. Her expression stayed calm. Only men who broke them fear the shovel. Mercer rode off without answering. His two men followed. Cole watched until the dust thinned along the road. Then he walked toward the barn. Naya followed. You're getting a shovel, she said. No, Cole took two. By the time they reached the cottonwood, the sun stood high over the ranch. The old tree leaned west, its bark split by decades of heat and lightning. Cole found the crooked star carved low into the trunk. He had seen it 100 times. Never noticed it. They began digging. No speeches. No questions. Only iron cutting dry earth. An hour passed. Then Cole's shovel struck something solid. Wood. Naya dropped to her knees. Together they cleared the dirt. A small cedar box appeared beneath the roots. But resting across its lid was something neither expected. A rusted iron marker. Cole wiped away the soil. 3 words emerged. Naya Red Hawk. Naya stopped breathing. Cole looked at her. The unexpected request had never been about finding treasure. It was about finding a grave. The grave changed everything. Cole stood beneath the cottonwood with one hand wrapped around the shovel handle, staring at the rusted marker as if the name might disappear if he looked away. Naya Red Hawk. Beside him, Naya had not moved. The wind pushed loose strands of black hair across her face. She did not brush them away. For the first time since Cole met her, the Apache woman looked uncertain. Not weak. Not afraid. Just struck somewhere deeper than words could reach. My grandmother was buried here, she whispered. Cole looked toward the house. My father never told me. Naya's eyes stayed on the marker. Maybe he was protecting her. From who? A wagon wheel creaked on the road. Both turned. 3 riders were approaching from Dry Creek. Then 5. Then more. Word had traveled. Fast. By noon, nearly a dozen townsmen stood beyond Cole's western fence. Jacob Mercer was not among them. That worried Cole more than if he had been. Frank Hollis, owner of the feed store, stepped forward. He removed his hat, but not the suspicion from his face. Heard you found an Apache grave on Bennett land. Cole leaned on the fence. I found a woman's name. That's how it starts. How it starts? Frank glanced toward Naya. Claims. A few men murmured. Naya remained beside the cottonwood. Cole could feel their eyes on her. Not seeing a woman. Seeing a threat they had already decided to fear. Frank continued. Today it's one grave. Tomorrow somebody says half your pasture belongs to a tribe. Cole looked at him. And who told you that? Silence. Then a rancher near the back spoke. Mercer's man came through town. There it was. Cole almost smiled. Almost. Naya stepped closer to the fence. I did not come for his ranch. Frank folded his arms. Then what did you come for? Her eyes moved toward the grave. To bring my grandfather here. The crowd went quiet. Even Cole turned toward her. Naya swallowed. He is dying. The words came without drama. That made them heavier. He asked to be buried beside Mara. Cole stared at her. Now he understood the request she had not yet been brave enough to make. Not land. Not money. Not ownership. A place beside the woman beneath the cottonwood. Frank shook his head. That makes 2 graves. Cole looked at him. Frank seemed to realize too late how small his argument sounded. Still, another man called out, "You allow this, Bennett, and people will say you surrendered part of the ranch." Naya looked at Cole. There was no demand in her face. No expectation. Only readiness to hear no. "I can take him somewhere else," she said quietly. That hurt Cole more than pressure would have. He looked at the marker, then at the men outside his fence. "What exactly are you afraid of?" Nobody answered. Cole opened the gate. "Not for the crowd. For Naya. You said your grandfather is dying." "Yes." "How long?" "Days. Maybe less." Cole nodded once. "Bring him." The murmuring began immediately. Frank stepped forward. "You sure about this?" Cole looked at the cottonwood. "No," that silenced them. Then he added, "But I'm sure a dying man asking to rest beside his wife isn't stealing my land." One by one, the townsmen looked away. Naya did not. Something changed in her expression. Not gratitude. Respect. Quiet. Dangerous. Because respect had a way of crossing boundaries faster than fear. That evening, Dry Creek filled with whispers. By sundown, Cole heard the first rumor. He was giving his ranch to the Apache. By nightfall, the story had become worse. And before dawn, someone painted 3 words across his barn door in black tar, "Apache land now." Cole stood beneath the lettering while Naya watched from the porch. She looked ready to leave. Cole picked up a bucket of water, then stopped. "No," Naya frowned. Cole set the bucket down. "Leave it." "Why?" He looked at the words on his barn. "Because tomorrow, I want everyone who rides past this place to see exactly what fear looks like." Then he noticed something nailed beneath the tar. A folded paper. Jacob Mercer's seal was pressed into the wax. Cole opened it. Inside was a single sentence. "Sell me the Western Acres by sunset, or I'll make sure the whole town believes they were never yours." The letter burned faster than Cole expected. He held Jacob Mercer's threat over the stove flame until the wax seal softened, curled, and disappeared into black. Naya watched from the table. "You should have kept it. For proof. For leverage." Cole dropped the last corner into the fire. Men like Mercer count on everyone keeping paper while they keep power. Outside, dawn had turned the tarred words on the barn almost purple. Apache land now. Cole left them there. By breakfast, 3 riders had slowed to stare. By noon, 6 more. None stopped. Naya sat beneath the cottonwood with the cedar box between her knees. They had finally opened it. Inside lay no gold. Only papers. A strip of blue cloth. A second photograph. And half a hand-drawn map. Cole unfolded it carefully. The western fence line was marked in faded ink. Beyond it, a narrow stream curved beneath 3 hills before. Disappearing beneath the words, "Shared water, Bennett/Red Hawk." Cole stared at the names. Naya touched the edge of the paper. "My grandfather has the other half." Cole looked up. "You knew?" "I knew he kept something." "That's different." "It keeps being different with you." For the first time, Cole almost smiled. Almost. A horse approached from the south. Frank Hollis arrived alone. No crowd this time. He dismounted slowly. "I came to apologize." Cole leaned against the fence. "For which part?" Frank glanced at the tarred barn. "That. You didn't paint it." "No, you believed it." Frank had no answer. That was answer enough. Naya stood. Frank removed his hat. "My wife says a grave is a grave, no matter who's under it." Naya studied him. "Your wife sounds wiser than most men in town." Frank gave a tired laugh. "She reminds me daily." Then his expression changed. "Mercer's telling folks your water rights are invalid." Cole straightened. "Why?" "Says the creek west of your pasture belongs to his new holding company." Naya and Cole looked at each other. The map suddenly felt heavier. Frank continued. "He's buying every dry ranch between here and Dry Creek. Cheap. Says he'll provide water after." Cole understood. Mercer did not want land. He wanted thirst. Control the creek, and every rancher would eventually kneel. Naya folded the map. "My grandfather knows where the old agreement was made." Cole looked toward the distant mountains. "How far?" "Half a day." Frank frowned. "You planning to ride into Apache country?" Cole reached for his hat. "I'm planning to read the other half of a map." Naya watched him. "You do not have to come." Cole tightened the saddle strap. "That seems to be the sentence people use right before I decide I should." They rode west before noon. No escort. No rifles carried in hand. Only 2 horses moving through miles of sage and redstone. The farther they traveled, the quieter Cole became. This was land he had spent his whole life seeing from one side of a fence. Naya noticed. You're nervous. No, you keep checking the ridge. I check ridges. You checked that one 3 times. Cole looked at her. Naya's mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. By late afternoon, smoke from cooking fires appeared beyond the canyon. Figures watched their approach. Men, women, children. Nobody welcomed Cole. Nobody threatened him either. That felt more honest. An elderly man sat beneath a hide awning near the center of camp. Thin shoulders, silver hair, eyes still sharp. Naya dismounted. Grandfather. The old man looked past her, straight at Cole. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then his gaze dropped to the silver locket hanging from Naya's hand. His expression changed. You found Mara. Naya nodded. The old man closed his eyes. Cole felt suddenly like an intruder standing inside someone else's memory. Then the elder reached beneath his blanket and removed a folded piece of leather. Half a map. He held it toward Cole. But before Cole could take it, the old man spoke. Your father kept his promise longer than you know. Cole froze. What promise? The elder opened his eyes. That no Bennett would ever sell the water. Wind moved through the camp. Cole looked down at the missing half of the map. And for the first time, Jacob Mercer's desperation made perfect sense. The two halves of the map fit together without a gap. Cole stared at them beneath the hide awning while the old man's weathered finger traced a faded blue line from the mountains to the western edge of Bennett land. The creek. Not just a creek. A promise. Naya's grandfather, Naya Red Hawk, leaned back against the post behind him. Your father and I made that map 31 years ago. Cole looked up. You knew him that long? Taza gave a tired nod. Long enough to know he was better than the stories he told himself. The words landed harder than Cole expected. All his life, his father had spoken about survival, property, boundaries, men taking what they could hold. Yet here was another version of him. One who had shared water. One who had hidden an Apache woman's grave beneath a cottonwood. One who had kept secrets until they became walls. Taza unfolded a second paper, older than the map. The edges nearly transparent. At the bottom sat 2 names. Elias Bennett, Naya Red Hawk. Between them was a simple agreement. Neither family would deny the other access to the spring feeding the creek. No sale could cancel it without both signatures. Cole read the line twice. Then a third time. Mercer can't control the water. Not legally, Taza said. Naya's expression remained still. But legality is only useful when someone is willing to defend it. Cole folded the paper carefully. He knows this exists. Taza looked toward the canyon entrance. He knows enough to fear it. That was when hoofbeats echoed through the rocks. Several men in the camp stood. No panic, only attention. A rider appeared at the canyon mouth. Then another, Frank Hollis. And behind him, 2 ranchers from Dry Creek. Cole stepped forward. Frank dismounted, breathing hard. Mercer moved early. Cole's stomach tightened. What happened? He filed claims this morning. Says the Western Creek is private water now. Naya looked at Taza. Frank continued. 3 families found Mercer's men putting up fence posts before breakfast. Cole's jaw hardened. He knows we're here. He knows something, Frank said. And he's telling everyone you rode west to bargain away the ranch. One of the Apache men muttered something under his breath. Another looked toward Cole with open suspicion. There it was again. The old line. Settler on one side. Apache on the other. Mercer standing somewhere beyond both, profiting from the distance. Cole turned toward Taza. I need that agreement. The elder did not hand it over. Instead, he looked at Naya. This belongs to both families. Naya understood. She stepped beside Cole. Not behind him. Beside him. We carry it together. Cole met her eyes. That simple sentence changed the room. Taza placed the document between their hands. No ceremony. No speech. Just paper. Yet Cole felt its weight. Outside, Frank watched them. You planning to take that to the courthouse? Cole shook his head. First, I'm taking it to the people Mercer expects to frighten. They rode back toward Dry Creek before sunset. 5 riders became 8. Then 12. Not warriors. Not a posse. Ranchers. Apache families. People with the same problem and different reasons for fearing one another. As they crossed the red flats, Naya rode beside Cole. You understand what happens if Mercer loses control of the water? He loses money. No, she looked ahead. He loses the lie. Cole said nothing. Because he understood. Money could be replaced. Land could change hands. But men like Jacob Mercer depended on something more fragile. They depended on people staying divided. When the first roofs of Dry Creek appeared beneath the evening sun, Cole saw a crowd gathered near the courthouse. Mercer stood on the steps, a fresh deed in his hand. Behind him hung a newly painted sign. Mercer Water Company. Naya slowed her horse. Cole did not. Mercer spotted them approaching. Then he saw who rode behind Cole. White ranchers. Apache families. Together. For the first time since this began, Jacob Mercer stopped smiling. Jacob Mercer held the deed like a weapon. Not because paper could hurt a man. Because enough frightened people believed it could. The courthouse steps were crowded by the time Cole reached the square. Ranchers stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the fading light. Storekeepers watched from wooden sidewalks. A few Apache families remained farther back, close enough to hear, far enough to leave if the mood turned. Mercer noticed that distance. He smiled again. You see, he called. Even they know where they belong. Cole dismounted. Naya did the same. Neither answered. Mercer lifted the deed. This document gives my company legal control of the Western Spring and every channel fed by it. Frank Hollis pushed through the crowd. Since when? Since this morning. Murmurs spread. Mercer let them. Fear always worked better when people repeated it themselves. Cole walked toward the courthouse steps. Naya stayed beside him. Not behind. Beside. Mercer's eyes narrowed. You brought witnesses? Cole looked at the ranchers. Then at the Apache families. No, he removed the old agreement from inside his coat. I brought memory. Mercer laughed. Old paper. Naya unfolded the joined map. 2 halves. 1 creek. 2 family names. The crowd quieted. Cole handed the agreement to Sheriff Abel Moore, who stood near the courthouse door, looking like a man who wished he were anywhere else. Read it. Mercer stepped forward. That document has no authority. Cole looked at him. Then you won't mind him reading it. The sheriff hesitated. That hesitation told everyone something. Finally, he opened the page. His eyes moved slowly across the faded writing. When he reached the signatures, his expression changed. What does it say? Someone shouted. Moore cleared his throat. The spring remains shared between the Bennett and Red Hawk families. Neither party can sell exclusive access without consent from both. The square went still. Mercer's face did not, but his hand tightened around the new deed. Private agreements don't override territorial filings. A voice answered from the back. They do if the filing is fraudulent. All heads turned. A thin man in spectacles stepped down from the boardwalk. Edwin Price, county survey clerk. Mercer's smile vanished. Price carried a ledger beneath one arm. I checked the record after Frank came to me. Mercer spoke softly. Careful, Edwin. Price stopped. For a moment, fear won. Cole could see it. Then Price looked at the ranchers around him. At Naya. At the Apache families Mercer had spent months turning into convenient enemies. He opened the ledger. The boundary on Mercer's claim was altered after certification. A murmur rolled through the square. Mercer descended 1 step. You're lying. Price held up the book. Your handwriting is in the margin. That did it. Not shouting. Not fists. Just one fact too solid to push aside. Mercer looked toward the men who had once supported him. Several stepped back. Space opened around him. Naya watched quietly. Cole noticed she was not smiling. Neither was he. This was not victory yet. Only truth entering the room. Mercer looked at Cole. You think these people will thank you when the creek runs dry? Cole's voice stayed calm. The creek was never yours to sell. Mercer pointed toward Naya. And now you trust her people with your water? Cole looked at the map. Then at Naya. No, the crowd shifted. Naya's eyes flickered toward him. Cole continued. I trust an agreement made before either of us inherited the fear surrounding it. Silence. Then he added. And I trust anyone who keeps their word more than a man who changes boundaries with ink. Mercer's face went pale. No one cheered. That made it worse. The sheriff folded Mercer's deed. You'll stay in town until this is reviewed. For the first time, Mercer looked trapped. Not by guns. By witnesses. As evening settled over Dry Creek, people began drifting away in small groups. Ranchers spoke quietly with Apache elders. Not warmly. Not yet. But they spoke. Naya stood beside Cole's horse. You could have claimed the spring alone. So could you. She looked at him. Why didn't you? Cole glanced toward the road, leading home. Because my father already answered that question 31 years ago. Naya's expression softened. Then Frank came running from the courthouse. Cole. Something in his voice stopped them. Taza collapsed on the ride back. Naya went still. Frank swallowed. He's asking for you both. The courthouse, the deed, Mercer, all of it suddenly became small. Naya mounted before anyone finished speaking. Cole was beside her seconds later. They rode west into the dark. Because winning the land meant nothing if they arrived too late to honor the man who had taught them why it mattered. By the time Cole and Naya reached the camp, the fire had burned low. No one stopped them. That frightened Naya more than shouting would have. People simply stepped aside. Naya Red Hawk lay beneath the same hide awning where he had joined the two halves of the map. A folded blanket covered his chest. His breathing came shallow now, each breath separated by too much silence. Naya dropped beside him. Grandfather. Taza opened his eyes. For a moment, they searched her face. Then found Cole. You came. Cole removed his hat. You asked. The old man smiled faintly. That is becoming a Bennett habit. Naya lowered her head. Taza reached toward her hand. His fingers barely closed around it. The cottonwood. We found her. Something in his face eased. 30 years of waiting loosened in one breath. Mara hated that tree. Naya looked up, surprised. Taza's smile grew slightly. She said it leaned like an old drunk. A soft laugh escaped Naya before grief caught it. Cole looked away. Some memories belonged to families before they belonged to stories. After a while, Taza spoke again. I want to go there. Naya became still. Grandfather, beside her. His voice was weak. The meaning was not. Cole understood before Naya answered. The grave. The request. Everything had returned to that cottonwood. Naya looked at Cole. There was no expectation in her eyes. That made his answer easy. The gate will be open. Taza watched him. Not just for me. Cole frowned. The old man gathered enough breath for one more sentence. Do not open a gate for the dead and close it again on the living. Silence settled beneath the awning. Cole felt those words land somewhere deeper than the courthouse argument. Deeds could protect water. Maps could prove boundaries. But paper could not teach people what to do with them afterward. Taza died before sunrise. Quietly, Naya sat beside him until the eastern sky turned gray. Cole remained outside. He did not intrude. He simply stayed. 2 mornings later, a procession appeared on the ridge above Bennett Ranch. No war paint. No raised weapons. No spectacle. An old wagon carried Taza beneath a woven blanket. Behind it came Apache families on foot and horseback. Children. Elders. Women carrying cedar branches. Cole stood beside the open western gate. Frank Hollis stood nearby. Then Sheriff Moore. Then 3 ranchers who had once repeated Mercer's warnings. More arrived. Some out of respect. Some out of curiosity. Some because shame had finally become heavier than prejudice. Jacob Mercer came too. Not freely. Sheriff Moore had brought him under supervision while the county reviewed the altered land records. Mercer stopped outside the fence. His eyes moved over the gathering. You're making a mistake, Bennett. Cole did not turn. Mercer continued. Today it's a burial. Tomorrow they'll claim the pasture. Naya heard him. So did everyone else. Cole looked toward the wagon carrying Taza, then toward Mara's marker beneath the cottonwood. A grave doesn't steal land. Mercer scoffed. Cole finally faced him. Greed does. No one cheered. That was not why they had come. Cole opened the gate wider. The procession entered. Naya passed him slowly. For one moment, their eyes met. No. Gratitude. Something stronger. Trust. At the cottonwood, Taza was laid beside Mara. The silver locket rested between their markers during the ceremony. Wind moved through the branches. The old tree leaned west exactly as it always had. When it was over, Naya remained beside the graves. Cole stood several steps away. You kept your word, she said. Cole looked toward the open gate. So did they. Beyond the fence, settlers and Apache families were speaking quietly. Not as friends. Not yet. But no one was leaving. Naya followed his gaze. The boundary was still there. Wood posts. Wire. Old habits. But for the first time, people were standing on both sides without treating it like a battlefield. And Cole realized Taza's final request had never been only about where a man should be buried. It was about whether the living were brave enough to stop inheriting every wall their fathers had built. For the first time in 4 mornings, the ridge was empty. Cole noticed before he noticed the sunrise. He stood on the porch with coffee cooling between his hands, staring toward the red stone where Naya had once watched his ranch in silence. No horse. No shadow. No Apache woman waiting for him to understand something he did not yet know. Only wind. He told himself that was what he wanted. Then he kept looking. 3 weeks had passed since Naya Red Hawk was buried beneath the cottonwood. Jacob Mercer's altered claims had collapsed soon after. Edwin Price's ledger went before the county judge. 2 of Mercer's partners turned against him before the week was over. Men usually became honest when dishonesty stopped paying. The Western Spring remained shared. Not because Cole gave anything away, because it had never belonged to one man in the first place. Changes came slowly after that. An Apache family watered horses beside Frank Hollis without argument. 2 ranchers helped repair the old trail near the creek. Sheriff Moore removed Mercer's company sign from the courthouse road and left the nail holes showing. Nobody called it peace. Cole preferred that. Peace was a word people used too early. Trust was quieter. It had to survive winter. Cole finished his coffee and walked toward the western fence. One section had sagged during the night. He carried a hammer and 3 new rails. Halfway there, he heard wood strike wood. Once. Twice. Cole stopped. Someone was already repairing it. Naya stood inside the fence. Not on the ridge. Not beyond the gate. Inside. Her sleeves were rolled to her elbows. Her black braid hung over one shoulder. A hammer rested in her hand while she examined a crooked rail with the expression of someone personally offended by poor workmanship. Cole watched for a moment. "You're doing that wrong." She did not turn. "You built it wrong." That fence stood 15 years. And still fell. Cole almost smiled. Almost. He walked closer. Naya drove another nail. This one straight. Beside her, hanging from the post, was the silver locket. Cole's expression changed. She noticed. "I thought you might want it." He picked it up. Opened it. Naya Red Hawk still stood beside Elias Bennett in the faded photograph. 2 people from a time when standing beside one another had apparently required more courage than either family understood. Cole closed the locket. "It belongs to your family." Naya looked at him. "Half of it does." Cole studied her face. Then the fence. Then the empty ridge beyond her. "You weren't watching this morning." "No. Thought you said you'd leave my land once I opened that room." "I did." Cole waited. Naya tapped the repaired rail. "I left." A pause. "Then I came back." This time, Cole smiled. Small. Real. He handed the locket to her. "Keep it." "Why?" "Because my father kept his half of the promise." He looked toward Mara and Taza's graves beneath the cottonwood. "Maybe we don't need to keep dividing everything they left us." Naya closed her fingers around the silver. For several seconds, neither spoke. Wind moved through the grass. A hawk circled far above the western hills. From the creek came voices. Frank Hollis arguing with an Apache elder over where cattle should cross. Neither sounded angry. Cole listened. "Progress." Naya tilted her head. "Barely." They both laughed. Then she grew quiet. "You know why I watched you those 3 mornings?" Cole leaned against the fence. "You said you were deciding what kind of man lived here." "I was." "And?" Naya looked toward the house. Then toward the open western gate. "My grandfather said a man shows himself by what he protects when no one is forcing him." Cole said nothing. Naya met his eyes. "You protected a promise you never made." The words settled between them. No confession. No grand declaration. Just truth. Cole picked up the final fence rail. Naya took the other end. Together they lifted it into place. The ridge remained empty behind them. It did not matter anymore. She no longer needed to watch from a distance. And Cole no longer needed a fence to tell him where one world ended and another began. By sunset, the repaired gate stood open. Not broken. Not abandoned. Open. Some boundaries were meant to protect. Others survived only because nobody had yet found the courage to walk through them.